The Hilton sale is on. Now through September 29th, you can save up to 20% on stays this fall and beyond. Long weekends, last-minute getaways, holiday gatherings. There's a Hilton stay for all of them. More moments, more experiences, more destinations. Now 20% off for a limited time because it matters where you stay. Don't wait. Book by September 29th and save up to 20% at Hilton.com. Terms apply. Hilton for the stay.
Mint is still $15 a month for premium wireless. And if you haven't made the switch yet, here are 15 reasons why you should. 1, it's $15 a month. 2, seriously, it's $15 a month. 3, no big contrast. 4, I use it. 5, my mom uses it. Are you playing me off? That's what's happening, right? Okay, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan. $15 per month equivalent required. New customer offer first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
War Eagle, and welcome to another edition of Ever to Podcast. This is our regular get-together in an audio show for you to get caught up on the latest Auburn news, topics, scuttlebutt, things that are happening out and about that you need to be aware of, whether it's on social media or just around the water cooler. This is to catch you up on the latest in the Auburn experience, all about Auburn sports, Auburn culture, Auburn family stuff. If it's orange and blue, it's what we do. So thank you so much for joining us in what we're going to be doing on episode 66 of Ever to Podcast. Today's date is September 23rd, 2025. I'm your host, as always, Kyle Loomis. We're going to be getting into quite a bit of news from a Monday that will be remembered forever. Certainly the major basketball news with retirements and hires of coaches. There was also a need to unpack some of the weekend, whether that was about football or not, probably mostly about football, and look ahead to Texas A&M as well. I'm probably going to miss out on a few things today, so let's just go ahead and start right here. I had planned on this show trying to focus primarily, as we have for the last few weeks, on prepping for Texas, unpacking Oklahoma, but Texas A&M as well. We need to look to that. We're going to do that, but certainly the biggest news of the year and the day, probably, and the week mainly, is the fact that as yesterday announcement came down, Bruce Pearl will step down, retiring as Auburn men's basketball head coach and from basketball entirely. Not really a humongous shock if you have been paying attention to a few things that have been going down. We did a live stream last night on our YouTube channel, celebrating mainly, but kind of talking through some of that. And it makes a lot of sense if you kind of pay attention over time that this was coming. I will admit that I didn't anticipate it being today, although I had a few things that I was becoming privy to that piqued my interest, that maybe something was going to be addressed soon. And I did not anticipate it, though, on Monday with a lot of other things going on, because we also had certain things leaked for football schedules and stuff when it was supposed to be tonight. More on that in a little bit, maybe. But here we are. Bruce Pearl is retired as the men's head basketball coach after 11 seasons. In some ways, it feels like it's been 11 seasons in a good way. In some ways, it feels like it hasn't been in good ways as well, as we've been having so much fun after he got Auburn out of the just horrendous state it was in a men's basketball program situation, and found its footing and its foundation to fall back upon. The fall wouldn't have been as bad as it used to be, and we saw that a couple of times where we were in the Final Four, dropped off a little bit, and came back again. Multiple times. We're number one overall ranked in the country, the number one overall seed. Two players were heavily favored throughout seasons for Player of the Year awards. Some won Defensive Player of the Year awards, all SEC titles, regular season titles, conference tournament titles, regional titles in the NCAA tournament. The list goes on and on. And, I think some people lose sight of that just because there isn't a national championship attached to his name about what Bruce Pearl has done and meant to the Auburn men's basketball team. And we don't have the time here on this particular show to go into every single detail of that. And not one piece of content, a podcast, a live stream is going to be able to do that. So we're going to continue to celebrate that across all of our content for a while. You can be sure on the Auburn Experience podcast, the main show, we'll be diving into that in some great detail this upcoming week. You know, it's funny, Austin, I always laugh. It feels like a major story gets dropped on us right when we release an episode, but it gives us some time to process it and get our thoughts together about that. So I just, as I've said in 1,000 places, I am just so grateful to Bruce Pearl for what he's done for the game of basketball, for Auburn basketball. As a Auburn business owner, I am so thankful for what he has done in terms of the content creator for Auburn, what he's provided, what he's allowed us to do. We, frankly, started testing this concept fully of multiple shows and content pieces because of Bruce Pearl arriving, and we're forever grateful for that. So, like I said, I'm not doing it justice on this one show of how we feel about you, and maybe Pat Dye said it best. We're just not smart enough to tell you how we feel about you, Bruce, but we want to acknowledge the retirement and the thankfulness for Bruce Pearl. On the heels of that, with some great posts, once again, Stephen Leonard and his team do an outstanding job of media for the Auburn men's social media accounts, videos and pictures and all that. Look, the great post-credit scene, some people have now called it the Auburn Cinematic Universe, with after the great 15-minute video of Bruce saying goodbye and acknowledging his retirement, they released a little clip of them exiting. The last shot was him and his family. He walks away, and you've seen it by now. He calls Stephen back over and says, "You forgot this," hands him the basketball, pulls the seat back, shakes his hand. He sits down, and it's official. Stephen Pearl is your next head men's basketball coach. If you're shocked by this, once again, you haven't been paying attention to a few things that have been going down. We've tried to keep you informed about it. I've been asked a lot of time, when do I think it's going to happen? I've always said it this way. Look, Bruce had until 2030 on his contract. He said he wasn't going to complete it pretty openly recently. So that said within the next 1 to 4 years. Well, there you go. It happened within the next 1 to 4 years very quickly. Stephen takes over, though. Lots of people are talking about this, whether this is a nepotism hire, whether this doesn't make sense. Just because someone's resume doesn't make sense to you doesn't mean it's not a good hire. I think this is actually the best of the possible situations that you can have. My belief and my hope is that this is something that the team that was assembled was being prepared for, at least to some extent, maybe not completely, and maybe some are going to be happy about it more so than others. But I think it's been pretty obvious this was becoming more and more Stephen's team, and it was time for him to take over. So we here personally are excited to watch the new era of college basketball with Auburn men's basketball. Look, continuity means something. We've seen Duke do it with their head coach that replaced Shire, I believe is how you pronounce his name, Mike Krzyzewski, and it works. Now, that's a name brand that's hard to mess up, but name brands have been messed up before. Kentucky's a good example of that, and they can bounce back with their name brand power. But there's a model for this kind of thing working. Somebody who's been around for a while, taking over, succession, continuity, that does matter. It's very important. So he's been, I believe the contract is for 5 years for him, which is pretty standard, I'm pretty sure of. As of this time, there's been no attrition yet. Anytime there's a change, you expect that. But I guess my hope and belief is there shouldn't be too much of it, at least in the coaching ranks, because these guys have been around for a while and probably have known this was on its way. I think those that were going to not want to be around have already left for the most part. But we'll talk about it, report on it when it happens. All right, I've spent a lot of time on that. Let me acknowledge some Auburn football stuff for you guys prepping for the week. We do need to get you going there. We have had the press conference from Coach Hugh Freeze. Once again, he did start off by acknowledging Bruce Pearl's retirement and Stephen taking over, and excited about that. Big things that he talked about, at least the takeaways for me, he really acknowledged how bad the special teams play has been and was in this game. In his opinion, based off what he said in that press conference, that was the difference in the game more than anything. So once again, I just want to be very clear. This is a coach taking responsibility upon himself and his staff and his team, not necessarily blaming the whole game on other scenarios, because I know that's probably what you all thought we were going to spend most of our time today talking about, and yes, I did too. Look, here's where we're at. I've said this a lot of places. Oklahoma fans continue. The majority of Oklahoma fans that I've encountered are just being very, belligerent about this and just aren't willing to be reasonable about this. All these things can coexist. The game outcome was altered. Auburn did have its game affected. significantly by the refs, which should never happen. And Oklahoma did enough to still get the win, and they should be commended for that. They bent the rules. The play is an illegal play. It doesn't matter. The only explanation they're trying to give now is that they checked with the refs. It doesn't matter what the refs have now been told that they were wrong, meaning that the play was not legal. So it was an illegal play. Accepting it is a sign of maturity. You got away with it. And listen, every team tries to find ways to kind of skirt the line, bend the rules and stuff like that. I'm not condoning it, but it does happen. And I'm sure Auburn does it sometimes. Own it. You still got the win. That's all it's about. So, yes, the game was affected. That doesn't mean that it's not still a win in the column for Oklahoma. There's a sect of Auburn fans, too, that need to accept that. They did win the game, and you need to be okay with that. They did win the game. So there's that, too. Just a quick note. We're not able to hit on everything that we need to today because of just time constraints. We try to keep this here very quick for you. Sad news today. Rudi Johnson, former Auburn great running back, and for the Cincinnati Bengals too, has tragically passed away. Reports on what occurred there is pretty tragic, but I'm not as up to date on the specifics of that outside of some reports. I just want to be careful about that. What's important here is the tragedy at a very still young life, only 40-something years old. And, you look back at the stats of him at the Bengals and that incredible season that he had with Auburn. To me, in my young adult life, that's the moment that I kind of look back to as that moment where I really started locking in. And other than just saying I'm an Auburn fan, being an Auburn fan, paying attention. So that rings true to me. It's a very sad day in that regard. So a lot's happened for Auburn fans over the last couple of days, and some of it's not been so good. But we always want to talk about the good and the bad, the whole of the Auburn experience here. We always want to encourage you a couple things as we leave you. Make sure that you are checking out the main podcast, the Auburn Experience. We broke down the game. Yes, we even broke down in great detail all of the issues with the refs. You're going to enjoy that. I think we did a well-rounded conversation about that. Episode 143 is out now. Please check that out wherever you get your podcasts. Obviously, if you're here listening, you get them here. So make sure you're listening to that podcast. We do appreciate that. And as always, we want to hear from you. Drop us a line at e2cnetwork@gmail.com if you just want to talk about anything, make a suggestion for a topic here, anything, really. And then social media direct messages are available to you as well. As always, we appreciate you being here and want to remind you in the Auburn Creed that it says that you should do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. War Eagle.